Australia's outback doesn't care who you are. Out here, mobile reception disappears without warning. Towns can be hundreds of kilometers apart, and a single wrong decision can leave you completely alone. Most people believe the greatest danger is the heat or running out of fuel, but sometimes the most dangerous place isn't the road. It's the place where you decide to stop. This is the story of a woman who pulled into a remote outback station and walked into a nightmare no one could explain. Her name isn't important. She wasn't an influencer, a journalist, or someone chasing adventure. She was simply driving across Western Australia on her own, enjoying the freedom that only the open road can offer. Her four-wheel drive had been running perfectly all day. The map beside her was marked with fuel stops, rest areas, and small country towns she'd visited before. Nothing about the trip felt unusual until late that afternoon. A quick glance at the dashboard made her stomach tighten. The fuel gauge had dropped far lower than she'd expected. According to her map, the next service station was still over 100 kilometers away. She slowed down, thinking through her options. Then, an old roadside sign appeared through the dust. Outback Station, fuel food accommodation, 5 kilometers. She'd never noticed it before, but with fuel running low, turning back wasn't much of an option. The gravel track was rough enough to rattle the entire vehicle. Loose stones bounced beneath the tires as red dust swallowed the road behind her. Within minutes, the highway had completely disappeared. When the station finally came into view, she eased off the accelerator. There were fuel pumps. There were buildings. There were parked vehicles. But there wasn't a single person anywhere. Not outside. Not at the pumps. Not even a dog. She parked beside the old fuel pump and switched off the engine. Instantly, the silence became almost unbearable. No birds. No insects. Not even the wind. She stepped out slowly and looked around. That's when she noticed something that made her stop in her tracks. Every vehicle parked around the station was covered in a thick layer of red dust, as though none of them had moved for weeks. And every single driver's door was slightly open. She glanced around the empty forecourt one more time before walking towards the station office. The screen door creaked as she pushed it open. Above it, a small brass bell gave a soft ding. She waited. No footsteps. No greeting. No movement behind the counter. "Hello?" Her voice echoed through the building, then disappeared into complete silence. For a place that claimed to offer fuel, food, and accommodation, it felt strangely abandoned. The station wasn't empty. At least, it didn't look empty. A mug of coffee sat on the counter, half full. A newspaper lay open beside it. The date printed across the front caught her attention. It was today's date. Someone had been here very recently. So where had they gone? Next to the cash register sat a worn leather visitor's book. Curious, she opened it. Most pages were filled with travelers' names, caravan groups, truck drivers, backpackers. The final page was different. Only 3 names had been written that week. The last entry had been signed less than 2 hours earlier. She reached for the old UHF radio sitting behind the counter. The power light was still on. She picked up the microphone. "Hello, is anyone there?" Only static answered. She tried again. Nothing. Then, for less than a second, a woman's frightened voice broke through the static. "Don't let her." The transmission cut out immediately. Silence returned. She slowly placed the microphone back onto its cradle. Her heart was racing now. Then, a sound echoed through the building. Footsteps, slow, heavy, directly above her. She looked towards the staircase at the back of the station. Someone was upstairs, and they were moving. Every instinct told her to leave. She could still get back in the four-wheel drive, turn around, and disappear down the track before sunset. But curiosity has a strange way of overpowering common sense. She took one slow step towards the staircase, then another. Each timber step groaned beneath her boots, echoing through the empty building. The footsteps above had stopped. Whoever had been up there was now waiting. The upstairs hallway stretched further than she'd expected. 5 guest rooms lined the corridor. Rooms 1, 2, 4, and 5. She stopped. There was no room 3. Only a blank section of wall where a door should have been. Yet, the sound she'd heard had come from exactly that spot. She ran her hand across the timber wall. The wood felt uneven. One section sounded hollow when she knocked on it. Then she noticed a tiny brass handle almost invisible beneath years of dust. It wasn't a wall at all. It was a hidden door. Someone had gone to great lengths to make sure nobody ever found it. She wrapped her fingers around the handle. It wouldn't move. Locked. She glanced back towards the empty hallway. No sound. No movement. Then she noticed an old key hanging from a nail beside the window, as though someone had wanted the door locked, but also wanted someone else to find a way inside. The old lock clicked open. She pushed the hidden door just enough to peer inside. The room was small. Dust covered almost everything, except a single framed photograph sitting neatly on an old bedside table. She stepped closer. The photograph showed smiling travelers standing outside this very station. Families, couples, backpackers. Then her eyes settled on the final person in the picture. A young woman, wearing the exact same jacket she was wearing now. She couldn't take her eyes off the photograph. Something about it felt wrong, not because of what it showed, but because of what it didn't. Every person in the picture was smiling, yet the station behind them looked exactly as it did now. Old, weathered, almost abandoned. Then, a floorboard creaked behind her. She spun around. The doorway was empty, but someone had definitely been standing there. She stepped into the hallway. No one. The corridor was empty. She started back towards the staircase, then noticed something on the dusty floor. Boot prints, fresh ones. The dust had been disturbed only moments ago. They hadn't been there when she'd walked upstairs. Someone else was inside the station, and they were close. The footprints led downstairs, past the office, and out through a rear door. Behind the station stood an old generator shed. Its metal door was slightly open. A faint mechanical hum drifted through the evening air, so the power hadn't been running by itself. Someone was keeping this place alive. Inside the shed, shelves were stacked with spare parts, fuel drums, and old tools. On a dusty workbench, she spotted a maintenance logbook. The latest entry had been written earlier that morning. Generator serviced. Fuel pumps checked. Accommodation ready. Signed with nothing more than the letter M. Whoever M was, they'd expected visitors. A sudden sound shattered the silence. An engine, not hers. A vehicle had just started somewhere beyond the station. She ran outside. Dust exploded into the air beyond a line of gum trees. She couldn't see the vehicle, only the trail it left behind. Someone had been watching her, and now they were leaving. She stood perfectly still, listening. The engine was gone. Only the wind remained, carrying red dust across the empty station yard. She hurried to where the sound had come from. Fresh tire tracks cut across the dirt, heading towards a narrow bush track she hadn't noticed before. Whoever had left knew this place for better than she did, and they clearly didn't want to be seen. She rushed back inside and searched behind the counter again. This time, she spotted an emergency UHF base radio mounted beneath a shelf. She switched it on. Static. Then a clear voice finally answered. Emergency relay. State your location. Relief washed over her. She quickly explained where she was. There was a long pause. Then the operator quietly asked, "Can you repeat the name of that station?" She gave the station's name. Silence. The operator took a slow breath, then said something she never expected to hear. "Ma'am, that station officially closed more than 12 years ago." She frowned. "That's impossible. I'm standing inside it." The operator's voice became firm. "If you're really there, leave immediately. Police are already on their way." As she waited for the police, she searched the office one last time. Behind an old filing cabinet, she discovered a locked metal drawer. It had been forced open years earlier. Inside were weathered reports, vehicle registrations, missing property records, and dozens of handwritten statements from travelers. Many described the same thing: an unexplained stop, an empty station, and the feeling that someone had been watching them. The fading daylight gave way to dusk. She stepped outside once more. Far beyond the highway, blue and red lights flashed against the horizon. Police. They were finally coming. For the first time since turning off the highway, she felt she might actually make it home. But behind her, from somewhere inside the station, a door slowly creaked open. The wooden door opened slowly. An elderly man stepped into the fading light. He looked to be in his 70s. Dust covered his boots. His wide-brimmed Akubra hat had seen years of harsh Australian summers. He didn't look frightened. He didn't look angry. He simply looked tired. "I've been waiting for you," he said quietly. "My name's Mick," the old man said. "I've looked after this place for nearly 30 years. She immediately demanded to know why he'd hidden from her. Mick lowered his eyes. "Because every time someone finds this station, they assume I'm the reason people disappeared." His voice carried no anger, only sadness. Mick pointed towards the endless stretch of desert beyond the station. Before satellite navigation, this road claimed lives every year. Drivers became lost. Vehicles broke down. Some wandered into the bush searching for help, and never found their way back. The station earned a terrible reputation. Rumors replaced facts. Eventually, nobody wanted to stop here anymore. Inside the office, Mick unlocked a storage room. Every wall was covered with photographs, newspaper clippings, letters from families, maps, recovery reports. Each one told the story of someone who had vanished somewhere in the outback. "I keep them here," Mick whispered, "so nobody forgets them." She realized this wasn't a collection. It was a memorial. Mick looked directly at her. "I never stayed because I had nowhere else to go. I stayed because sometimes people still arrive here when they need help." He glanced towards her four-wheel drive. "If your fuel gauge hadn't dropped today, you would have missed the flooded creek 20 kilometers ahead." She froze. Heavy rain upstream had washed the crossing away that afternoon. Without stopping here, she would have driven straight into it. For the first time, she realized the station hadn't trapped her. It had saved her life. The flashing lights grew brighter as two police four-wheel drives pulled into the station. The officers stepped out cautiously, scanning the buildings before approaching Mick. One of them recognized him immediately. "G'day, Mick." It wasn't the greeting of a man meeting a suspect. It was the greeting of someone meeting an old friend. She stood there in silence, realizing she'd judged him far too quickly. One officer unfolded a map on the bonnet of the police vehicle. A major flash flood had washed away the creek crossing less than an hour earlier. Several roads had already been closed. Had she continued driving, she would have reached the crossing just after sunset, with no mobile signal, no witnesses, and no way back. The stop she'd feared all afternoon had almost certainly saved her life. Before leaving, she asked Mick one final question. "Why stay here? After everything that's happened?" He looked across the endless red horizon and smiled. "Because the Outback doesn't give second chances. If this place can give someone one, then it's worth staying." Those words stayed with her long after she drove away. Weeks later, she couldn't stop thinking about the station. People online still called it haunted. Others claimed everyone who stopped there disappeared. But she'd seen the truth with her own eyes. Sometimes, fear grows from rumors. And sometimes, the quietest places hide the kindest people. The Australian Outback remains one of the most beautiful and unforgiving places on Earth. Every year, travelers disappear because of heat, floods, mechanical failures, or one wrong decision made far from help. Most stories never make the headlines. Some become local legends, and a few become reminders that appearances can be dangerously misleading. So if you ever find yourself alone on an endless outback road, and you come across a lonely station in the middle of nowhere, take a moment before you decide whether to drive past or stop, because sometimes the place that looks the most frightening may be the very place that saves your life.